Aita for disrespecting my mom. Growing up, my mom, we'll call her A, always told me I was a good kid. I was quiet, I did what I was told. And other than the occasional bickering with my sister, we'll call her K, I never caused trouble. This all started around 2019 after A and my stepmom's final breakup. They've been on and off since I was born. We moved in with my uncle and stayed with him for about a year. And during this time, I fell into a depression. At first, there wasn't a noticeable difference. It wasn't until after we got our own place that there were changes. It started with A procrastinating more and eventually stopping taking care of me and Kay altogether. While I am bothered by that, it isn't even my issue. When I told A year later about my depression, her response was basically, well, what do you want me to do about it? I received no therapy, my grades were dropping, and she was constantly screaming in my face to get my shit together. Kay, who also knew I was depressed, belittled me every single day, telling me that I wasn't good enough, that nobody would ever love me, that I was a failure, and how I'd spend the rest of my life alone. I tried going to A about this, but she'd always dismiss it by saying that she didn't want to hear it and was tired of my and Kay fighting. I learned not to come to A with any of my problems since she'd just dismiss them anyway. I met my boyfriend the next year, and my mental health has gotten better since then. However, that same year, Kay became depressed. A immediately got Kay into therapy. When her grades dropped, she was never screamed at, and if I inconvenienced her in any way, she would threaten to tell A. I would get my phone taken for talking to my boyfriend when Kay was trying to sleep. It wasn't even like I was loud. I made sure to whisper. There was even a time when Kay almost had my phone taken for literally breathing. I wish I was exaggerating. That year, I finally started fixing my grades, and I was so proud of myself. But when I told A about it, she would only respond negatively. It even gave me a negative response after I told her I would be graduating. Kay, however, was only praised for managing to graduate. Eventually, I started talking about moving in with my boyfriend, and A's response was to threaten to find me and drag me home. This happened multiple times. Eventually, I turned 18, and knowing nothing about the real world, I started asking A if she could teach me life skills. My stepmom tried to teach me, but I hadn't seen her since 2019 at this time. A hadn't taught me a single life skill, to which she agreed but never ended up doing. At this point, I realized that with me being 18, I didn't have to put up with it anymore. This is when my attitude started. At first, I'd only have an attitude when my mom would threaten to drag me home if I moved or bring up my terrible grades from my 10th grade year to her friends or family. My attitude got worse after she continuously treated me like a child because I didn't know how to be an adult, even though I literally begged her to teach me, and she never did. Then one night, she came into the room while I was crying. I wanted to be left alone, but she wouldn't stop pressuring me into talking to her. Of course, because I knew she'd just dismiss my feelings again, I didn't want to give in. That's when she started screaming at me about how I never want to talk to her, and I only ever talk to my boyfriend. At that point, I had enough, and I've had an attitude with her since then. It eventually led to 2 major arguments later on. During the first one, I was arguing with Kay about a cat she had decided to keep. The little monster wasn't allowed outside of our room, and because he wasn't neutered, he'd spray all over my stuff. A eventually stepped in and took her side. A and I ended up screaming back and forth, but I guess she didn't like me arguing back because she got in my face with her fist raised and threatened to hurt me. Being terrified, I ended up responding by telling her to back the fuck up, and that's when she attacked me. She pinned me up against my bed and kept hitting me. I ended up busting her lip accidentally, and she threatened to call the police and then told me she was kicking me out. Having nowhere to go, I ended up kissing her ass and apologizing so I could stay, but a few months later, we got into another major fight, and now I'm getting kicked out again. As of today, I have 2 weeks to leave, and I don't know what to do. So, AITA for disrespecting my mom.